And once again, Jason Ross filling in today here on the Nick Cattle Show. And all week long, we're going to be sharing memories of ARCO Arena because, as you know, this weekend it'll be kind of saying goodbye to ARCO. And the guy who's going to be able to share a lot of those memories with us is Greg Lukenbill, original owner of the Sacramento Kings. And, Greg, I kind of want to start there. We know you brought this team here. We know you had the original ARCO. But let's get to ARCO 2, or basically what everybody has known for years as ARCO Arena. You were, and the Kings were at that time, the first team to have a sponsorship for a building. So how did ARCO Arena even come about?
Well, I dreamed it up in the 70s, but I never got the opportunity to implement it here until the 80s. And so I just went over to the Sac State Library, honestly, and did some research around 1980 or so, late 70s, early 80s, and but I dreamed up the concept in 75. But the simplicity of it was that, I looked at Standard & Poor's and Moody's, and I was just, I could never figure out why companies that, like Coca-Cola or Pepsi or, some of the other types of people that convey food and so forth inside the arenas didn't have their name on a building. And I also can tell you that at the time I'd done a national research, of course, and kind of like a Stanford Research Institute approach to it, so to speak, because they were very famous for their advanced research. And so the idea was do your homework up front. Well, what I figured out was Carrier Air Conditioning Company had a facility in Syracuse for the university, and Bush, of course, had Bush Stadium, and then there was Wrigley Field, Fenway Park, places like that. And basically they were named after the people who capitalized the facilities on the front end. And so the differentiating characteristic was really kind of a financial differentiation, which is the capitalization versus the concept of somebody actually renting the name, if you will, or leasing the name, or, that type of thing. And so I thought, well, I don't get it. I mean, I just don't understand why somebody has never done that before. So we actually put together an RFP after I got the team. After the temporary arena was under construction, of course, in 1984, we put together requests for proposals and sent it out to 100 Fortune 500 companies, and we got 60 affirmative responses. And out of that, we narrowed it down to 20 companies that were willing to put up money, serious money, and whittled that down to 4, which is Chrysler, Nissan, Anheuser-Busch, and ARCO. And that we whittled that down to ARCO because it was a California-based company out of Los Angeles that we thought would be a home run and had a great nexus to the capital presence, right? Which turned out to be the exact reason that they did it, because of the state capital's influence on ARCO in the state of California, which was a differentiating characteristic, which is the reason that they did the deal to begin with, which actually created a whole different kind of perspective about the relationship of facility names. Next guy to do it was Jerry Buss, and because nobody paid any attention to us doing it in Sacramento, it was chopped liver until Jerry Buss did it. But once it became the Great Western Forum, which was by John Wayne, right?
Yeah.
So then it took off like a bat out of hell nationwide, which is no different than what happened with Sacramento's Electric Light Parade on 9/9/1895, and the fact that Walt Disney picked it up and turned it into the nightly Magic Light Parade in every Disneyland worldwide, brought to you by Sacramento. But nobody knows that kind of Sacramento history. Isn't that interesting?
It's amazing. And that now it's become standard. It's protocol. It's everywhere. Everybody's got the naming rights. So you were one of the originators of that. And every time I think of you, I think of the story that's become legendary by now as here's an owner up in the rafters at ARCO when there was a leak. And, tell us your version of that memorable night in that building.
Well, the short version of it was an absolute downpour outside with a hell of a lot of rain, and it was blowing the rain up over the vent inside the cupola on top, which is a 24 by 24 foot heat valve for the building with all those bodies in there generating heat, right? And so I basically couldn't come up with a solution to the prospective leak, so we just figured out, I figured out actually just, I think I'll create a diaper, right? So I went and got a banner and tied it up in a way that it kept the water off the floor. There was only about 9 minutes left in the game or something like that. So we were in the fourth quarter, up by 5, and saving the game had us lose the game nonetheless. But whatever. The real problem with that game, which was worth probably worth about $300,000 or $400,000 to us, was that at the time was that the Sixers were on their West Coast swing and they weren't coming back, and we'd already been to the East Coast, so there was no way to make the game up. So we would have been a hanging chad, if you will, if we didn't get that game completed. And I was having cardiac arrest over the realities of that national or international fiasco coming unfolded for Sacramento. So I just wanted to get it fixed. So that was my motivation, to be honest with you.
I mean, any fear, trepidation, and my goodness, Greg, I guess you just went for it.
Well, no, I actually was honestly, I will tell you that there's a building over on Blumenfield Drive in Sacramento that I went up in when I was 14 with my father, who taught me how to build with my hands, and there was no OSHA at that point in time, and we built for the California Auto Growers. We did a lot of work for the auto growers in the 50s into the 80s, actually until the end of the 80s, and it started out with my dad and his uncle, and I bought my uncle's share of the business, and that's how I got into that business to begin with. But when I was 14 years old in 1968, we built a catwalk on Blumenfield Drive that's 50 feet in the air that runs alongside a conveyor belt that basically is on the top of an almond mountain that they use for storage and distribution inside the building. And so the conveyor belt goes just back and forth and on a screw drive and dumps almonds back and forth across that thing, and that catwalk that we built 300 feet, or I think it was 600 feet long, ended up, it's still there today. You can still see it today. So, but it was 50 feet in the air, and there was no net, there was no rope, there was no safety harness, there wasn't a damn thing. And of course, I'd ask my dad, so what happens if I slip? And he said it only happened once.
Oh my goodness!
So that's how I grew up building, brother. I mean, that's the way I grew up building this. I used to do crazy shit like that. I used to walk on top of the panels and build a lot of tilt-ups when I was very young and strong and not afraid of falling because I thought I'd probably catch myself. So anyway, I looked around on the catwalk that night and said, who the hell's got more experience doing not to do? Yeah. Nobody, right?
You did it.
So I just did it then, and that was no big deal. It really wasn't that big of a deal to me, honestly.
Well, it's
legendary. I hate to say that, but it really wasn't. It was not nearly. It was easier to do it than live with it. Does that make any sense?
Sure, absolutely. And it's become a legendary story all these years. So in our last thought here, when you think of ARCO, what is your most cherished memory for you, Greg Lukenbill?
Just David Stern. I mean, my connection to him, it goes back to the Tampa Arena, the Permanent Arena Golden One, which is I had nothing to do with Golden One, but I'm telling you, I'm so proud of it. I can't even tell you, honestly. That building is, state of the art. That's a global scale building, and I'm really proud of the fact that ARCO Arena, both buildings were basically stepping stones, right? So, and trying to build because honestly, you can't have quality of life without the quality of the facilities to support the development that is, creates the aspiration and inspiration for kids to see other people excelling on a national or global scale come into the community. So for me, it was always about the facilities, always about the quality of life. And so if you think about it, I also built the Hyatt, two arenas, the bank building downtown, the D.O. Mills Bank building. I converted that into a public facility and about 4 million other feet in the valley. But nothing was as showcasing as the basketball team, which had nothing to do with construction, but everything to do with Sacramento's lack of facilities.
Well, it's going to be an honor to see this building finally get its last curtain call. Greg, thank you for joining us, and again, we appreciate it. Thank you for sharing a few of those ARCO memories.
Happy trails, brother. Good luck.
All right, thank you. That's Greg Lukenbill, original owner of the Sacramento Kings on ARCO Memories. If you think about it, really a pioneer there in getting the naming rights, and just sounded different. It was the Chrysler Arena or some of the other Final Fours, and I know he deems it as not that big of a deal to be in the rafters like that, but that was crazy and heroic and bold, and I guess he said it like, hey, who's better to do it than the guy who's got a bunch of experience? But most owners would not do that.